Hi there. So I've had lots of questions in since I recorded the Crystal Stargate series. Loads and loads of questions. So I've chosen 20. Now, usually a question, and they're asked so well by people who watch my videos, read my books. The questions asked are so good, so intricate, that really I can't do them justice by replying, and I present these questions to the nine. But what I've decided to do is take these 20 questions and go through them quite quickly. So normally I would go quite in depth into pretty much every single one of these questions, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to touch on them very briefly so I can get through 20 questions in a short space of time. A bit of a challenge for me, to be honest. And so I'll do the best I can. Now, what usually occurs is when you have a question and you only answer it in a very sort of short way, in a brief way, that will usually open up more questions, because the analysis and the in-depth response hasn't been given. So obviously each question will open up more questions, and also people listening to the response or the answer to the question can easily say, well, I don't agree, I actually think it's this. But you may well be right as well, because I haven't been able to touch on the entire in-depth analysis that comes with all of these answers in order to give in order to do justice to the question. So I'm going to try my best. I've got 20 questions here, all sent in by you guys, and I'm going to do my best to get through them in a short space of time. So it's a challenge. Okay, question 1. Did the 1111 Crystal Stargate link to the Pleiades, Sirius, or Arcturus? So the response to that, in a very brief way, is yes. The 1111 Crystal Stargate linked to all of reality, all of the cosmos, and all of those different planetary systems. Specifically, I would say there was a Sirius link here, perhaps more so than the other planetary systems, but all of them, Pleiades, Sirius, Arcturus, all of the cosmic alignments would link to this crystal stargate. Everything within this time sector of our galactic field, which is a huge, vast celestial presentation, if you will. So answer to that is yes. Question 2, I've been told by my mentor not to trust anything coming in from Arcturus or the Pleiades because they are the bad guys. Is this true? It's so difficult to know who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. Okay, so your mentor has a point in a way. The only problem is that to actually take one group of individuals and say they're the bad guys and another group of individuals and say they're the good guys is a very linear, third-dimensional interpretation of galactic truth. Within Arcturus, there is predominantly a service to others vibration. So these are predominantly, if you like, good guys, but there are always going to be some that are not. And Arcturus itself is a multi-dimensional reality. So you're looking at different planets within that Arcturus system. So no, it's not true that you should not trust anything coming in from Arcturus. Neither is it true that you shouldn't trust everything coming in from Arcturus. Pleiades, the same. There are perhaps more of a negative vibratory individual group in the Pleiades than in Arcturus system. However, the Pleiades have the most beautiful, wonderful souls. I myself am a Pleiadian soul. From that perspective. So if you've been told not to trust anything coming in from the Pleiades, I am both of those because I am Pleiadian and the 9 are Arcturian. So you wouldn't be trusting anything I'm saying if you were to listen to your mentor. So whilst there's truth in what your mentor is saying, that's a very literal interpretation. There are no good guys, there are no bad guys. In one community or race or culture or planetary system or group. There's always a mixture in every group, even Orion, which is predominantly a service to self planetary system in our history. But in the future, it isn't. So we are looking at a non-linear reality, past, present, and future, and we have to take all that into consideration. So the answer to that is trust yourself and your alignment, not the name of the soul, planetary group, or individual, or planetary system, or messenger. So that's question 2. Question 3, how does it work? In the winter solstice, when I live on the other side of the world coming into the summer solstice, same DNA activation, same star-seeded consciousness field, Princess Aurora, dynamic, all of that. The only difference is there will be a slightly different energy within everyone in the summer solstice than there is in the winter solstice, and that's really to do with the season itself and the type of celebration that occurs during that season. So in the summer solstice, there may be more celebratory solar energy. In the winter solstice, there's more of a sort of going within subconscious winter lunar energy. But ultimately, when it comes to DNA activation and starseed awakening, things that are going on within the third dimensional system, as the whole system is deconstructed and reconstructed, it's the same thing. So anything broadcast specific for the winter solstice is still for you in the summer solstice. Best to call it the December solstice when you are speaking to a planet that has both. So same thing with slight energetic differences. Could say a lot more there, but I'll move on to question 4. I feel we are not energy per se, but we are creators of energy. Can you comment? My comment would be, I understand what you are saying here, but it's my understanding that we are all energetic. We are all energy systems. Yes, we are creators of energy, we are conductors of energy, but we are energy ourselves. However, if you see energy as something that's not living, and we are organic life force, and we create energy because energy isn't living, then your sentence, your comment would be correct. But the true presentation is that energy is alive as well. When it comes to the perspective of the third dimension, we are organic structures and energy is not alive. That's true from the third dimension, but from higher dimensional perspectives, energy is living. So therefore, the answer's kind of both there. Yes, you're right, but I would also present that we are energy. So it's both. Question 5, this cosmic dust you were speaking of, does it contain plasma? There are many different forms of plasma. Plasma is within everything because it is the crystalline structure of life itself. So this cosmic dust is created from a kind of a planetary debris. There are different types of particles within the dust. Some are lying dormant when it comes to their ability to activate life. They're made up of more denser celestial fabric. So I would say, no, there's not really any plasma as such in there, even though plasma is within all celestial bodies. The plasma we're talking about here is the plasma that has the ability to activate light and is light. There are other cosmic dust particles that are activated and they are plasmic. So the answer to that question is predominantly yes. Yes, they do contain plasma with caveats depending on how dense the dust is. Question 6, will President Donald Trump be impeached within our collective timeline? I'm not sure what this has to do with the Crystal Stargaze series. However, of course it does. It's completely connected. But either way, I'm going to respond to this question very briefly. Will Trump be impeached within our collective timeline? The collective timeline that we are manifesting is a quantum field, and there are many, many realities that are close to us within that quantum field. Sitting within the timeline, the trajectory we are on, the chances of an impeachment are extremely unlikely and extremely remote. So much so that I'm going to say no, he will not be impeached within our collective timeline. There are other timelines outside of that where that would occur, but in those timelines, Trump would never have made president anyway. So they're not really relevant because they don't hold President Trump as a president in those timelines. So timelines where he is president, in our collective timeline that we're manifesting and going towards, the chances of him being impeached are extremely remote, to the point where I'm going to say no. If he is, I will be absolutely astounded. I'm going to say no on that. Question 7, does the plasma technology have something to do with telepathy? Yes, it has everything to do with telepathy, because the plasma technology is that which activates the inner technology, and the inner technology, one of the tools or one of the acts created by the activation of the inner technology is telepathy. And so when we're telepathic, we are using a plasma technology. So it has everything to do with it, yes. Could talk about that in way more depth, but that's the response in a brief sense. Question 8, why do some people remember their past lives and others do not? Everyone has a storage system regarding past and future and alternative incarnations. Those who've come forward with cohesive memory structure retained within their matrix, within the skeletal system, are far more likely to remember their past lives, because everything remained cohesive through that death to birth conscious transfer, or through that death experience into a reincarnation. Everything becomes one and they go into unity consciousness. There are some who have a lot lying dormant within that memory field and still remember some past lives. Others remember a distorted past or future life. Those that don't remember at all, they're simply not ready to, because often a past life memory won't come up unless it's relevant. If you're cohesive, if you're in distortion, you can remember things that are not relevant, but you're working with a distorted aspect. So there's going to be an imbalance in your memory system. Those who are cohesive are highly likely to remember their past lives, but when they do, and future lives and alternate lives, when they do, it's going to be relevant to them as an individual. Those that do not have those memories, that is not relevant yet, or it may be that they haven't activated that memory system, or that they didn't come in with a cohesive system, a memory system, so it's harder for them to remember. It's all to do with awakening and not being awakened. So we could look at that in a dimensional sense. Third dimensional individuals most probably won't remember their past lives. They don't even necessarily believe in past lives. Those that are awakened in a fifth dimensional consciousness will remember their past lives, but they're in a unity consciousness. They don't believe in past lives either, because they understand past, present, and future don't exist, and that everything happens simultaneously. So many layers there, much we could say, but this is really to do with activation and awakening, or non-activation and awakening. So that's question 8. Question 9. Is integrity the same thing as the positive judgment you were talking about? That's that I was talking about in the analysis. The Indigo Warrior template that you were explaining, is integrity the same thing as the positive judgment? Yes, it is, but it's slightly different. It has a different energy. Integrity is the cohesion, the way you live your life, and the way that you take action emotionally and physically, and in every way. Everything is integral together, and you follow that integrity. So if something feels out of alignment to you, it's usually not in integrity at that moment. If something feels in alignment, it's in integrity. That's usually how it works. So integrity is that integral whole self. Judgment in the warrior template is not really integrity in the same way, because it's not a full whole energy that you would align with. It is something that you make. It is a concept you hold, or it is an opinion that you make, an energy stamp that you take, either regarding yourself or someone else or a group of others, or an action or an event or a group or a community or whatever it may be. So judgment is slightly different in its presentation. It is, however, completely connected to integrity, and one could use that word in those sentences if they wanted to. The 9 teach me to use words that are as in alignment as possible, and integrity wouldn't quite be there in the same way that judgment would be. When it comes to creating boundaries and making a call, a decision, a stance about something, integrity is more something you follow, but they are very, very connected. Question 10, what is a service to self structure? Impossible to answer this briefly, so what I would say is go to my YouTube channel and have a look through the videos. There are tons and tons of videos where I'm talking about the service to self structure, either as myself or information from the 9. As briefly as possible, one could say an individual has a polarization within them, either positive, which is good, loving, kind, compassionate, or negative, which is self-serving, self-important, feeling that they are better than everyone else and wanting to take from others without having a care for others. Very much a good way to explain it is service to others is, I love everyone because I know everyone is me. We are one, we are unified. I love myself, therefore I love everyone else because we're all the same person. Service to self would be, we're all one, I know that. I love myself, and because we're all one, it doesn't matter what happens to anyone else as long as I'm okay, because I am all there is and I'm the only one. So everyone else is completely irrelevant and not important. The only one who's important is me. Very similar, but vastly different in that perspective. So that's service to self structure. It encompasses what many know as the deep state, the Illuminati, etc., etc. Vast subject. I've done the best I can briefly. Question 11. There are five individuals you say that the 9 told you went into the Jesus in the Bible. Who are the 2 women out of the 5? So in a higher dimensional sense, we're looking at a male energy. So if we look at an energy system, it's 3 parts male and 2 parts female. When we take that down into the actual physical, then we've got 2 actual incarnated women and 3 actual incarnated men. I'm not given any names because there were many names used for these individuals throughout history, but one of the women we would know as Mary Magdalene. The other one, I simply am not given that information because the names are so irrelevant, really, as to who those individuals are, because they are living metaphors of a structure. But one of them would be Mary Magdalene, and that's the best way really to answer that question. But again, vast subject. Question 12, why should the service to self individuals change their ways when they get everything that they want? Well, no one is saying that they should change their ways. I mean, obviously, when it comes to aligned judgment in the warrior sense and within integrity, of course, they should change their ways. However, that is up to them to do that. So no one's saying that they've got to change their ways. What we are saying here, individuals who are following an ascension timeline, is that reality is changing its ways, and the reality we experience is changing its ways. So we come into a service to others vibratory field, and we do not come into contact with that negative polarity in the same way that we have done for thousands of years. It's reality that's changing. Now, within that, we will see some of these service to self individuals change their ways within our personal and global timeline. Others may not. They may need to go on further as a negative polarized soul, and they'll go to another planet or another dimension, or they'll have other incarnations. So no one's saying they should change their ways. When it comes to the ultimate judgment, yes, they should. But are we supposed to judge that? The answer is yes and no in different ways. So again, vast subject, but no one is saying they have to change their ways when they get everything they want. Actually, they're not getting everything they want. This is the thing. They have done or rather they have thought that they were, but when you actually look at what they want and their agenda, everything is going wrong for them right now. They're not getting what they want at all. So again, vast subject. Question 13. My understanding is that the sun created the planets. In any case, I'd like more information on this process. So the physical sun, in my understanding, the physical sun in the third dimensional universal structure did not create the planets. They are all solar celestial structures that are birthed together, if you will. However, if you want to go higher into the higher density field, the higher universal structure, then the core central point would be the grand central sun, which is many layers behind our physical sun. Our physical sun is an emanation from this grand central sun, which is a singularity or 0 point field within the core structure of our solar system or galactic structure. The planets are birthed through that. So one could say that that is the birthing technology, or the cosmic birthing canal, and therefore yes, that structure from that perspective, that central sun, grand central sun, would be birthing the planets, for the grand central sun in that respect is the mother. So in that respect, you could say the sun births the planets. So there's truth there. But if you really want to go deeper, and obviously I'm going through these questions briefly, there is an antimatter field. It's a field of pre-matter. And what is there is memory and idea and thought. And that is the ultimate place of creation. And that's where the planets came from. So the question here, the statement you made here, is that the sun created the planets. No, it was the antimatter field, which is an aspect of the grand central sun, so that you could say the grand central sun created the planets. This antimatter memory field created the planets. But what is that? It's the thoughts of all and everything and all and everyone, including us. Our thoughts, when they're cohesive, go into that field. We therefore create the planets. We create the planets. We create the grand central sun, and the grand central sun creates the planets and creates us. So ultimately the response to this question would be, or statement would be, the creator and the created, or the creation, are one and the same. So question 14, I want to know where you get this information from. Again, hugely vast. So one answer would be, I get this from the 9. If you want to go and research who the 9 are, there's plenty of information on my channel, but we could say that they are 9 white-winged angels, angelic beings, and they tell me this information and they show me this information. But that is such a very limited answer to your question or statement. So maybe it is better to explain this by, if you go back to the analysis of the Crystal Stargate series, where I talk about the storage system within bone, within the skeletal system, the DNA. When that is drawn up, when you start to activate this, you start to remember who you truly are, which is a energy matrix emanating from source. And in that memory, you know all and everything, or you have access to all and everything. So this information comes up, but often, because we're in human form, we need like an intermediary or a guidance structure to assist us to understand what it is we're processing, because what we're processing is stored crystalline memory code, and we can see the code and it may not make any sense to us at all. It's like, what is this energy? What is this code? I don't understand it. So the guidance system comes in to help us decode it. So where do I get this information? From the 9 and from my own memory system, my own buried or awakening skeletal system, the energetic part of the human self. That's where I get my information. So again, vast question that I could talk about for hours. Question 15, can you please explain What are these different names? Sophia, Aurora, Gaia, and Terra. I'm confused. Why are there so many different names for the Earth? Well, the reason why there are so many different names for the Earth is because the Earth has been discussed for billions of years prior to our existence, and in existences that we don't even know about prior to our history, and they've been given different names from that perspective, and they've also been given different names from beings on other planetary systems and in other galaxies, and different individuals are able to key in and tune in to different parts of the cosmic reality and pick up what these names are. Going through these four you mention specifically, because as I've said, I'm going through these questions very briefly. Sophia is not the name of the Earth per se. You could call the Earth Sophia if you wanted to, and you wouldn't be wrong. But the model that I use here, that the 9 have taught me, that I use to explain this multidimensional code, within that model, Sophia is the consciousness of all and everything in a female sense. She is a divine feminine goddess or queen energy. So she would be the consciousness of the galaxy, the universe, multiple solar systems, multiple galaxies, rather than the Earth per se. But the Earth is made up of that. So you could call the Earth Sophia if you wanted to. Aurora again wouldn't necessarily be the planet itself in a geological sense, but would be a planetary consciousness, simply because Aurora is the consciousness of all awakened individuals on Earth, all the starseeds. So if you want to give the starseed consciousness a name, it would be Aurora. And because the starseeds are on Earth and were born on Earth and are part of Earth, then Aurora would be the name for the planetary consciousness. Gaia is the name, if you will, of the, so say the Earth in a third dimensional sense is called the Earth. Gaia would be another name for the Earth in a higher dimensional sense. So could be fifth dimensional. That's the way the 9 use this, that Gaia is a fifth dimensional name for the fifth dimensional Earth. But when you awaken to the fifth dimension, you're going to call Earth Gaia. So Gaia is the name for Earth, one name. Terra was a name given to the Earth by, or also some pronounce that Tara, but in the UK we say Terra, was a name given from a consciousness outside of the Earth. So basically, Gaia is the consciousness, the name we within the Earth give to our Earth, and Terra is the name of the consciousness of the Earth given to those outside of the Earth. And it's more fourth dimensional, if you will. There are many models, many names, and ultimately, what name do you want to give the Earth? What sounds right for you? There is no right or wrong way to name these things. There are other names for the planetary consciousness. There are other names for the starseed consciousness. And Sophia, Aurora, Gaia, and Terra are names for other things. It's all about what is your template? What do you resonate with? You don't have to follow my template or anyone else's, only your own. So yes, it can be confusing, that is true. Question 16 now. Is King Arthur and Merlin, are King Arthur and Merlin, real? So the answer to that is yes and no. King Arthur and the presentation of the story is very real, not exactly literal in the way it's presented in history books or in fictional films and things, but the story is real. However, it is the same story as the story of Jesus. And in that presentation, King Arthur and Jesus are kind of the same entity, just told in 2 different ways. Merlin is the presentation in a physical sense of he who is magical, so the magician. Was there someone called King Arthur on our third dimensional Earth? There may well have been. That isn't necessarily anything related to the King Arthur that we know, but there were individuals that went into the story of Jesus or the story of King Arthur. And I'm told it's the same as with the Jesus story, 3 men and 2 women. So if we were to look at that as a consciousness, 3 parts male, 2 parts female, went into the makeup of King Arthur or Jesus as a simultaneous story presentation. So yes, it's absolutely real, but not fully as it's presented. But it's okay to go with that presentation. In fact, it's more than okay. It's wonderful, because the starseeds are triggered. There are key codes within the Camelot story for the starseeds, for awakening, for human awakening. And Merlin, now that's a different matter. Was there an individual who was magical called Merlin? Yes, there was, and more than one. So I don't know how many, but there were individuals from billions of years ago, prior to our known history, in Atlantis, an Atlantean priest or a few of Atlantean priests. In fact, the Merlin organization was a group as well. That's what I'm told. So the Merlin is completely different to King Arthur, and is rooted in much more actuality of its presentation as we see in the fictional stories. Question 17. Is the disgrace of Prince Andrew in the UK currently a symbol of the fall of the Illuminati, deep state, service to self factions, and the false royalty that you spoke about? The answer to that is yes. As the false royalty, the presented royalty within the third dimension, as that structure begins to fall and decode itself and transform and rebuild itself, the true royalty is presented. Now, what that means is honesty, integrity, light, truth, compassion, love, service to others, positive polarization. Anything within that structure will rise and sustain, and anything outside of that structure is going to fall. Now, in that sentence, I've just given you a lot of information about what's going on with Prince Andrew. I'm not going to make a statement about what he did and what he didn't do in a literal sense, but I have given you the answers to any questions you may have about him in that statement. But the answer to your question is yes, it's symbolic, and there is more to come. Question 18. Is the divine princess Aurora anything to do with the Aurora Borealis in the Northern Lights? Not specifically in a literal sense, no. In a more unified, higher field, higher energetic sense, yes. In the sense that the collective consciousness of the Starseed, which is Princess Aurora, are creating the timelines, leading the timelines for Earth, and the Aurora Borealis is the presentation of plasma in a way where we can actually see it with our naked eyes, and that plasmic presentation, which is known as the rainbow bridge, if you want to go sort of into other metaphors, is an activation for the starseeds. In that respect, Princess Aurora and the Aurora Borealis would be very connected, and from an even more unified perspective, one and the same thing. In a literal sense, the divine Princess Aurora is the consciousness of the starseeds, and the Aurora Borealis is the presentation of true plasma, and is an activation and an emanation of the rainbow bridge field. So yes, there's a connection, and yes, it's to do with each other. Again, vast subject, and I can't do it justice in the way that the 9 could. So that's definitely a question to present to the 9 at some point. Question 19, so we're almost there. This comes in from somebody who asked me, do the numbers 831 or 831 and the number 313, 313 mean anything, as I have seen them so often repeatedly for many years? So what I will say here is there are master numbers that are sitting in the global consciousness and part of the flame letter, language of light, alphabetical numeral, collective unconscious, archetypal field, and those numbers, those master numbers, are shared by everyone who comes into that awakening. So that would be 1111, 222, 1212, 144, 108. So when you say mean anything, if you mean, are they part of that field, that collective unconscious flame letter field on a global level, the answer to that, don't be disappointed here, is no from that perspective. However, each of us have an individual reality bubble, an individualized timeline, and numbers take on sequence that have meaning for us specifically, and not just for us in our current incarnation, but for us as a soul. So 831 and 313 are numbers that mean something to you specifically. So they are just as important in your reality as 1111 or 1212 or 144 or 108, you know, would be in anyone else's reality. They're master numbers for you specifically. They may well be shared with others, but they're not embedded within the collective unconscious. However, when you take them down to their singular numeral, you have number 3 and number 7, and both very powerful numbers, especially 3, as that is the Trinity. And you've got 313, so that's a Trinity field, and you've got 831, which adds up to 3. So you've got Trinity numbers here. So when you break them down numerologically, yes, they have meaning. When you look at them as numbers sequences, 831, 313, they are extremely meaningful for you because you keep on seeing them. So this is your meaningful subjective experience for you to decode. So hope that has, you know, given you some response or answer to your question, because I know you wanted me to respond to that, so I have. And question 20, final one. I keep dreaming of snakes. Can you tell me what this might mean? So we've got a few questions here that didn't really have any particular connection with the Crystal Stargate series, but that's okay. These are the ones that I chose to look at, and you know, I may well do another 20 questions with Magenta Pixie at some other time. I keep dreaming of snakes. Can you tell me what this might mean? So very deep symbology. Fertility, creativity, oh gosh, a huge field of symbology, incarnation and reincarnation. Obviously, we've also got a negative presentation of the snake as well. You know, the reptilian, the sly one, the one who lies, the one who's keeping secrets, the, you know, service to self Illuminati field. But that was a hijacked symbol. The snake is the key to awakening and knowledge through reincarnation, incarnation, moving beyond reincarnation. Incarnation and repeated reincarnation is not a negative thing. It's something that's very positive. It's how we learn, but it can be a negative thing when we've chosen as a soul that we don't want to go through it and we want to experience something different. So when we're entrapped in reincarnation, it's a negative thing. But when we choose to go into reincarnation, or if we move out of the reincarnational wheel through the incarnational wheel and find this sort of portal to get out of that, all of this has a positive presentation because it teaches us on a soul level. So snakes are very, very powerful and have multiple meaning. I do have a video, so I know that that's a really brief answer to, again, a hugely in-depth subject. I have a video on my YouTube channel. Now, it was uploaded in May 2009, so over 10 years ago, a decade old, but it's called The Fish and the Snake in Dreamtime. And so go take a look at that video. So because it's 10 years old, it doesn't mean that the information isn't completely relevant to your question. So I really feel that your question will be responded to in that video, The Fish and the Snake in Dreamtime, which was uploaded May 2009. And I will put a link in the description to that video, The Fish and the Snake in Dreamtime. So that was my 20 questions with Magenta Pixie, going through 20 really deep, in-depth questions as briefly and as quickly as I possibly could. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for listening. Do send in more questions. I can't promise that I will respond to them or that the 9 will, but if those questions jump out at me and I feel that they must be responded to on a global level, I will do so either in one of my books or in one of the channeled videos presented to the 9 or in a video like this. So, you know, do send questions in if you want to, and thank you to those who did send questions in this time, and keep a lookout for more Q&As. So thank you, and I will see you again soon. Bye.
In this transmission from the White-Winged Collective Consciousness of Nine, I, Magenta Pixie, bring forward information specific to utilising the rose gold flame as antidote to 5G, EMFs, chemicals, chemtrails, and similar. The presented template utilises the Schumann resonance, and the technique is alchemical unification. In this book, the Nine discuss synchronicity, discernment skills, and understanding of discordance and disharmony within truth and lightworker communities. They present a workable model of expression, assisting the spiritual explorer in creating a necessary toolkit. This allows the individual to construct a shield, bringing safety, harmony, expansion, and cohesive sovereignty into their own personal reality and their matrix field. I am pleased to present my new short book, The Black Box Program and the Rose Gold Flame as Antidote.